Victoria slid the legal papers across my mahogany dining table with her perfectly manicured nails, her smile sharp as broken glass. Robert, darling, we both know you're not getting any younger. It's time to be practical about your estate. Derek nodded beside her, my own son avoiding my eyes like a guilty child. When Derek finally looked up and said, Dad, we need what's rightfully ours, and we need it now, I felt something fundamental shift inside me, like tumblers falling into place in an old safe. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw them out immediately. Instead, I calmly picked up my phone and canceled Derek's car insurance policy, the $3,200 monthly premium I'd been paying for 4 years on his Porsche. Let me tell you how this all started, because sometimes the most devastating revenge comes from simply letting people face the consequences of their own greed. The November rain hammered against my study windows as I reviewed the quarterly reports from Thompson Development. 43 years I'd been building this empire, starting with a single duplex Catherine and I bought with our wedding money. Now, at 71, I controlled 18 commercial properties and 47 residential units across Denver. Every brick, every lease agreement, every late-night negotiation had been worth it to build something lasting. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Dad, V and I want to drop by tonight. Need to discuss some family matters. Important stuff. I smiled, setting down my bourbon. Derek rarely initiated family visits unless Victoria was orchestrating something. My daughter-in-law had been unusually sweet lately, even inviting me to their charity gala last month. I'd written a check for $15,000 to whatever cause she was promoting, watching her eyes light up with genuine warmth for the first time in years. Come on over, I texted back. I'll order Chinese from that place you like. By 7 o'clock, I had the dining room set up properly. Good china, Catherine's favorite tablecloth, the expensive wine Derek had given me for my birthday, though I suspected Victoria had chosen it. The apartment felt warm and inviting, rain pattering peacefully against the windows. This was how family dinners should be. Derek arrived first, shaking rain from his coat. He looked tired, older than his 38 years, but he hugged me with what seemed like genuine affection. How's business, Dad? Still conquering Denver real estate. One property at a time, I laughed, pouring him a drink. Though I'm thinking about slowing down, maybe travel more. Your mother always wanted to see Scotland. Victoria swept in 10 minutes later, stunning as always in her designer coat and perfect makeup. She kissed my cheek, leaving a faint trace of expensive perfume. Robert, you look wonderful. That new suit is very distinguished. Thank you, dear. You both look fantastic. Marriage agrees with you. We settled around the table, the conversation flowing easily. Derek talked about his latest business idea, something involving sustainable energy consulting. Victoria described their new country club membership, how they'd met some fascinating people from old Denver families. I was thinking, I said, serving myself more lo mein, maybe it's time I started helping you two more directly. I know starting a business is expensive, Derek. And Victoria, I see how hard you work on your charity events. They exchanged a glance I couldn't quite read. Actually, Dad, Derek said, clearing his throat, that's kind of what we wanted to discuss. Victoria reached into her purse and withdrew a manila folder. Her movements were precise, practiced, like she'd rehearsed this moment. Robert, we've been thinking about your estate planning. With Catherine gone, and you getting older. I'm 71, not 91. I laughed, but something in their expressions made the humor die in my throat. Of course, Victoria continued smoothly, but estate planning is really about being proactive, making sure your wishes are clear and that the people you love are protected. She slid the folder across the table. We've had some attorneys look into streamlining the inheritance process. These documents would give Derek and me power of attorney over your business decisions, plus immediate access to a portion of your assets. I opened the folder slowly. The legal language was dense, but certain phrases jumped out. Immediate transfer of 60%, irrevocable trust, mental competency assessments. Derek leaned forward. It's just paperwork, Dad, but it would give us the ability to help manage things if you ever get sick or need assistance. Plus, it protects the estate from taxes down the road. I see. I kept my voice neutral, studying their faces. And this was your idea? We just want to be responsible, Victoria said. Your business is substantial, Robert. We'd hate to see it mismanaged if something happened to you. I closed the folder and set it aside. This is quite a lot to process. Mind if I ask who recommended these attorneys? Friends from the country club, Victoria said quickly. Very reputable firm. They specialize in estate planning for successful families. The word successful hung in the air with particular weight. I looked at my son, at this young man I'd raised, supported through 3 failed businesses, whose mortgage I'd been covering for 4 years since his consulting company collapsed. Derek, I said quietly, do you remember what you told me when I gave you that loan for your first startup? His face flushed slightly. Dad, that's not. You said you'd pay me back within 2 years. You said it was a sure thing, that I was investing in your future. I kept my voice conversational, almost gentle. That was 27 months ago. The loan was for $120,000. Victoria's smile never wavered, but something hardened in her eyes. Robert, that's exactly why we need to be smart about this. Derek's learned from those experiences. He's ready to handle real responsibility now. Real responsibility, I repeated. Like the credit cards I've been helping with? Or the car payments? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Derek shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Dad, we appreciate everything you've done. Do you? I stood up slowly, walked to my study, and returned with a folder of my own. Because I've been doing some calculations. I opened the folder and read from the top sheet. Car insurance, $3,200 monthly for the past 4 years. That's $153,600. Car payments before that, $800 monthly for 3 years. That's $28,800. Credit card assistance. Varying amounts, but approximately $18,000 total over the past 5 years. Victoria's fingers drummed silently on the table. Then there's the mortgage help. $2,800 monthly since Derek's business folded. That's $125,400. The original business loan, $120,000, never repaid. Various emergencies and medical bills, $43,000. I looked up at them. That's $468,800. Not counting interest or opportunity cost. Derek's face had gone pale. Dad, I never asked you to keep track. You didn't ask me to keep track, I agreed. But you did ask for the money. Every month like clockwork. Sometimes twice a month when things got tight. Victoria cleared her throat delicately. Robert, that's what family does for each other. That's what love means. Sacrifice and support. You're absolutely right, Victoria. That's exactly what love means. I sat back down, folding my hands. So help me understand something. If love means sacrifice and support, why are you here tonight asking me to sign away control of everything I've built? The silence stretched until I could hear the rain against the windows, the distant hum of traffic. Derek cleared his throat. It's not signing it away, Dad. It's protecting it. Making sure it stays in the family. The family. I nodded slowly. Tell me, son, what exactly have you contributed to this family wealth you're so eager to protect? That's not fair, isn't it? I leaned forward. Because from where I sit, I see a 38-year-old man who's never held a job for more than 18 months, who's burned through nearly $500,000 of my money, and who's now sitting at my table with legal papers demanding more. Victoria's mask finally slipped. Her voice turned cold, professional. Robert, you're being emotional about this. These are practical considerations. You won't live forever, and when you're gone, someone will need to manage your assets. Would you rather it be family, or would you prefer the state decides what happens to your life's work? When I'm gone, I repeated softly. Well, yes, eventually. We're all mortal, Robert. I looked at Derek. Is that how you see this too, son? You're just waiting for me to die, so you can inherit what you haven't earned. Dad, that's not... we're not. Derek stumbled over his words, but his meaning was clear enough. I stood up again, this time walking to the window. The city lights blurred through the rain. Denver spread out below like a circuit board. Somewhere out there were the properties I'd bought one by one, the tenants whose families I'd housed, the businesses I'd helped build. Everything I'd created from nothing but work and Catherine's faith in me. "You know what your mother used to say?" I asked without turning around. She said the measure of a man isn't what he accumulates, but what he builds. What he leaves behind that's better than what he found. I turned back to face them. "I've been trying to figure out what I've built with you, Derek. What I've left behind that's better than what I found." Derek's eyes filled with tears. "Dad, please, we can work this out." "We don't have to." "Work what out?" I walked back to the table and picked up Victoria's folder. These papers that would give you power of attorney over a business you've never worked in, control over assets you've never helped build. I opened the folder again and read more carefully. Immediate transfer of 60% of liquid assets. That would be about $8 million just to start. Victoria's composure cracked slightly. "Robert, you're making this sound much more dramatic than it needs to be." "Am I?" I closed the folder and looked directly at her. "Victoria, let me ask you something. In the 5 years you've been married to my son, how many times have you invited me to dinner at your house?" She blinked, clearly not expecting the question. "I don't see how that's relevant." "Humor me." "I don't know. Several times. We've had you over several times." "Twice," I said. "Twice in 5 years. Both times when you needed money. Once when Derek's business was failing and you needed me to co-sign the mortgage. Once when you wanted me to invest in that spa you were considering buying." Derek shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, Victoria's been very welcoming." "Has she?" I looked at him steadily. "When was the last time she called me just to see how I was doing? When was the last time either of you asked about my health, my loneliness since your mother died, anything about my life that didn't involve my wallet?" The silence was deafening. Victoria straightened in her chair, her professional mask sliding back into place. "Robert, I think you're being unfair. We care about you very much. That's exactly why we're here tonight." "You care about me?" I nodded slowly. "Is that why you've been telling people at the country club that I'm getting senile? That my business decisions have become erratic?" Victoria's face went white. Derek stared at her in shock. "I have friends too," I continued calmly. "People who hear things. People who care enough about me to mention when my daughter-in-law is setting the stage for a competency challenge." "Robert, I never." "Margaret Whitmore heard you at the charity auction. You told her you were worried about my mental state, that I'd been making bizarre financial decisions. You suggested that family might need to step in soon to protect me from myself." Derek turned to Victoria. "You said that." "I was concerned," Victoria said defensively. "You saw how confused he was at the gala last month. He couldn't remember names. He seemed disoriented." "I had the flu," I said quietly. "I told you I was running a fever but didn't want to miss your event. I came anyway because I thought it mattered to you." The weight of that settled over the room like smoke. Derek's voice was barely a whisper. "Victoria, what have you done?" "I've been practical," she snapped, her composure finally cracking completely. "Someone needs to think ahead in this family. Someone needs to plan for reality instead of living in some fantasy where Robert lives forever and keeps bankrolling our lives." "Bankrolling your lives," I repeated. "That's an interesting phrase." Victoria realized her mistake immediately, but it was too late. "I didn't mean." "No, I think you meant exactly that." I walked to my desk and pulled out another folder. "Derek, do you know how much money you and Victoria have spent in the past year?" He shook his head mutely. $87,000. Beyond the mortgage and car payments I cover, beyond the insurance and utilities, you've spent $87,000. "On what?" I opened the folder and read from the top sheet. "Country club membership, $12,000 annually. Vacation to Aspen, $18,000. Victoria's wardrobe for charity events, $23,000. Dinners out, averaging $800 weekly, so about $41,000 annually." Derek's golf equipment and lessons, 7,000. Spa treatments and personal care for Victoria, 15,000. Derek stared at the numbers. I didn't realize. You didn't realize because you've never had to realize. Someone else always covers the bills. I closed the folder. Do you want to know what I spent on myself last year? They waited. $14,000. Total. That includes food, clothing, utilities for this apartment, everything. Because I learned a long time ago that wealth isn't about what you spend, it's about what you build. Victoria's voice was sharp with frustration. So what, Robert? You want us to live like paupers? You want Derek to drive a 20-year-old Honda and shop at Walmart. I want Derek to understand the value of what he's asking me to give him. The value? Victoria laughed bitterly. The value is $8 million in liquid assets plus whatever the business is worth. That's the value. No, I said quietly. The value is 43 years of work. The value is getting up at 5 a.m. for 2 decades to check on construction sites before most people have their first cup of coffee. The value is Catherine and me eating mac and cheese for 6 months so we could make the down payment on our first rental property. I walked back to the window watching the rain. The value is learning that everything worth having costs something, and nothing worthwhile comes free. Derek's voice was thick with emotion. Dad, I know I've made mistakes. I know I've let you down. But I can do better. I can learn. Can you? I turned back to him. Because this folder in Victoria's hands suggests otherwise. This isn't about learning, Derek. This is about taking. Victoria slammed her hand on the table. Fine. You want honesty? Here's honesty. Derek and I have a lifestyle to maintain. We have social obligations, business relationships that require a certain level of investment. We can't just drop out of society because you think spending money is somehow immoral. A lifestyle to maintain, I repeated. Yes, and like it or not, that lifestyle benefits your legacy too. The connections Derek makes at the country club, the relationships I build through charity work, those things have value. They maintain the Thompson name in this city. I stared at her for a long moment. Victoria, what charity work? She blinked. What do you mean? I mean actual charity work. What do you do besides attend events and write checks with my money? I organize fundraisers. I serve on committees. You attend parties, I corrected. You buy expensive dresses and eat expensive food and take credit for raising money that comes from other people's pockets. That's not fair, isn't it? I walked to my computer, pulled up a website, and turned the screen toward them. The Children's Hospital fundraiser you organized last month. According to their records, total donations, $43,000. According to the invoices I found in Derek's desk, event costs, $38,000. Victoria's face flushed red. Event costs are necessary. $5,000. That's what actually went to sick children. $5,000 from a $43,000 fundraiser. I closed the laptop. That's not charity, Victoria. That's a hobby funded by other people's generosity. Derek buried his face in his hands. Oh God, Victoria. Tell me you didn't. It's normal, she protested. All charity events have overhead. That's how the system works. The system, I said softly, is supposed to help people, not subsidize your social calendar. I walked back to the table and sat down, suddenly feeling every one of my 71 years. Let me tell you about charity, I said quietly. Last month, Mrs. Rodriguez in Building 17 lost her job. Single mother, 2 kids. I could have evicted her for non-payment. Instead, I gave her 3 months free rent and helped her find work with one of my contractors. No publicity, no tax write-off, no fundraising dinner. I looked at Victoria. That's charity. Helping people when nobody's watching, when you get nothing back except the knowledge that you've made someone's life a little easier. Victoria's voice was ice cold. How touching. But that doesn't change our situation, does it? You're still going to die eventually, Robert. And when you do, what happens to all this noble wealth you've accumulated? Does it go to Mrs. Rodriguez and her grateful children? The words hit like a physical blow. Derek gasped. Victoria, stop. No, Derek. Someone needs to say this. Robert isn't immortal. He's 71 years old, he has no other children, and whether he likes it or not, we are his family. When he's gone, his money will either go to us or to the government in taxes. Those are the only two options. I looked at her carefully, this beautiful woman my son had married, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time. You're right, I said finally. I'm not immortal. I probably have 10, maybe 15 good years left if I'm lucky. Victoria's expression brightened slightly, which is exactly why I need to be very careful about what I do with those years, I continued, and very careful about who I trust with what I've built. I stood up and walked to the door, opening it wide. Rain blew in, along with the sound of traffic and distant thunder. I think this conversation is over. Derek looked between Victoria and me, panic in his eyes. Dad, wait. We can talk about this. Can we? I kept my voice calm, reasonable, because it seems to me that everything's been said. Victoria has made it clear that she sees me as a temporary obstacle to her inheritance. You've made it clear that you believe you're entitled to my life's work without having contributed to it. That's not. I don't, Derek stammered. Then what is it, son? Because what I heard tonight was two people who've spent nearly $500,000 of my money demanding access to several million more. Victoria stood up, gathering her papers. Fine, Robert. But this conversation isn't over. You can throw us out tonight, but the reality doesn't change. You need us whether you admit it or not. Do I? Who else do you have? She moved toward the door, her heels clicking on the hardwood. Your old construction buddies? Your tenants? Face it, Robert. When you get sick, when you get too old to manage your properties, when you need someone to make medical decisions for you, we're all you've got. She paused in the doorway, rain misting her perfect hair. So take your time. Be stubborn. But eventually you'll realize that family is family, flaws and all. And when you do, we'll be here. Derek hesitated at the threshold, looking back at me with something that might have been regret. Dad, I'm sorry about tonight. Victoria's right that we're family, but she's wrong about everything else. Can we try again? Maybe lunch this weekend? I looked at my son, this man I'd raised and loved and supported through every failure and mistake. Derek, do you know what you've never asked me? He shook his head. You've never asked me what I want. In 38 years, you've never once asked me what would make me happy, what my dreams are, what I hope for in the time I have left. I stepped closer to him. You've asked for money, for help, for co-signatures and bailouts, but you've never asked what I want. Derek's eyes filled with tears. What do you want, Dad? I looked past him at Victoria waiting impatiently by the elevator, then back at his face, so much like Catherine's around the eyes. I want to know that the man I raised understands the difference between earning something and taking it. I want to believe that somewhere inside you is the person your mother and I tried to build. I am that person, he whispered. Then prove it. Not with words, not with promises, with choices. I stepped back. Good night, Derek. I closed the door and listened to their footsteps fade down the hallway. The elevator dinged. Silence returned to my apartment, but it felt different now. Not lonely, but clean, like a fever had broken. I walked to my study and sat down at the desk Catherine and I had bought together 40 years ago. The rain was tapering off, leaving just the sound of water dripping from the eaves. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the contacts until I found my lawyer's number. Diana Walsh answered on the second ring, even though it was nearly 10 o'clock. Robert, is everything okay? Diana, I need to schedule a meeting. Tomorrow if possible. It's about my estate plan. Of course. Is this urgent? I looked around my study at the photographs of Catherine, at the awards from the Denver Business Association, at the framed first dollar from my first rental payment. 43 years of building something worthwhile. It's urgent, I said. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet for a long time, thinking about Victoria's words. She was right about one thing: I wouldn't live forever. But she was wrong about everything else. I did have choices. I did have options. and I was about to explore every single one of them. I walked to my desk drawer and pulled out the folder I'd been avoiding for months. Bank statements, canceled checks, records of every payment I'd made on Derek and Victoria's behalf. The numbers told a story, but not the one they thought they were telling. They told the story of a father who tried to love his son by giving him everything, only to discover that everything was never enough. They told the story of a man who'd confused enabling with caring, who'd mistaken dependency for love. But they also told the story of someone who'd kept meticulous records, who'd documented every transaction, every loan, every gift that had never been repaid. I picked up my phone again and dialed a different number. Mitchell? It's Robert Thompson. I need to hire you for some investigative work. Mitchell Brennan had been my private investigator for business matters for over a decade. Background checks on potential partners, due diligence on property deals. He was thorough, discreet, and absolutely relentless when he caught the scent of deception. What kind of investigation, Robert? I looked at the legal papers Victoria had left behind in her haste to make a dramatic exit. I need you to look into my son and daughter-in-law's financial situation. Everything. Income, debts, spending patterns, credit reports. I want to know exactly how deep in the hole they really are. How deep do you want me to dig? All the way to bedrock, Mitchell. All the way down. Any particular timeline? I thought about Victoria's confident smile, her casual threats, her certainty that I had no choice but to surrender to her demands. Rush job, I said. I'll pay double your usual rate if you can have a preliminary report by Friday. Consider it done. After I hung up, I made one more call. Paul? It's Robert. I know it's late, but I need to ask you something. Paul Martinez had been my oldest friend since our construction days. The only person besides Catherine who'd known me when I had nothing but ambition and work boots. Sure, Robert. What's going on? If I needed help with something difficult, something that might get complicated, could I count on you? A pause. Robert, you've been helping me and my family for 20 years. If you need something, anything, just say the word. I might take you up on that. Good. It's about time you let somebody help you for a change. I hung up and sat back in my chair, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Not anger, exactly. Not even hurt, though that was certainly there. Something colder, more focused. Purpose. For the first time since Catherine died, I had a clear sense of what needed to be done. I pulled out a legal pad and began making lists. Phone numbers, account numbers, policies, and procedures I'd need to follow. By the time I finished, it was past midnight and I had 3 pages of notes. At the top of the first page, I'd written, Day 1, Insurance. I looked at that line for a long time, thinking about Derek's Porsche sitting in his driveway, thinking about the $3,200 monthly premium I'd been paying for 4 years. 4 years of covering the insurance on a car worth more than most people made in a year, a car my son had bought with money he'd borrowed and never repaid. Tomorrow that would change. I folded the legal pad and put it in my desk drawer, next to the records of every payment I'd made on their behalf. Then I turned off the lights and went to bed. For the first time in months, I slept soundly. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, the storm having blown through overnight. I made coffee, read the Denver Post, and ate breakfast like any other day. But everything felt different, sharper somehow, like I was seeing the world in high definition after years of blur. At 9 o'clock sharp, I called my insurance company. Good morning, Thompson Development. This is Robert Thompson. I need to cancel a policy. Certainly, Mr. Thompson. Can I have the policy number? I read off Derek's car insurance policy number from memory. I've been writing checks for it every month for 4 years. I see that policy, sir. That's for a 2021 Porsche 911, registered to Derek Thompson. Just to confirm, you want to cancel this policy effective immediately. Effective immediately. Can I ask the reason for cancellation? I looked out my window at the Denver skyline, at the city where I'd built my life and my business one careful decision at a time. The policyholder is no longer my responsibility. I understand. The policy has been canceled. Mr. Thompson will receive notification by mail within 3 business days. Thank you. I hung up and checked the first item off my list. Then I moved on to the second item, car payment. Derek's Porsche lease was in his name, but I'd been making the payments through an automatic transfer from my account to his. $847 monthly for 36 months. I'd made 31 payments so far. I called my bank. Customer service, this is Jennifer. How can I help you today? I need to cancel an automatic transfer. Certainly, sir. I'll need your account number and some verification information. I provided the details, walked through the security questions, waited while she pulled up my account. I see the transfer you're referring to, Mr. Thompson. $847 monthly to Derek Thompson's account. How long have you been making this transfer? 2 years and 7 months. And you want to cancel it effective immediately? I thought about Derek's face last night, the way he'd avoided my eyes when Victoria slid those papers across the table, the way he'd nodded along with her assessment of my mortality, my expendability. Effective immediately. Done. The transfer has been canceled. Is there anything else I can help you with today? Actually, yes. I need to cancel several more automatic transfers. I worked through the list methodically. The mortgage assistance, $2,800 monthly, canceled. The utilities payment I'd been covering for their house, $430 monthly, canceled. The country club membership, $1,000 monthly, canceled. By the time I finished, I'd canceled $18,417 in monthly automatic payments. Is there anything else, Mr. Thompson? I looked at my list. One more item for today. I need to place a stop payment on check number 4789. What's the amount of that check? $15,000. And the payee? Denver Children's Hospital Foundation. There was a brief pause. Sir, just to confirm, you want to stop payment on a check to a children's hospital? The check was written based on fraudulent information, I said calmly. The charity event it was meant to support had misleading financial reporting. I understand. The stop payment has been placed. There will be a $35 fee. That's fine. I hung up and sat back in my chair. In 30 minutes, I'd eliminated over $22,000 in monthly support. By this afternoon, Derek would start getting phone calls. By tomorrow, he'd be scrambling to figure out how to cover his basic expenses. But I wasn't done yet. At 10 o'clock, I drove to Diana Walsh's law office. Diana had been handling my legal affairs for 15 years, ever since she'd helped me navigate a complicated commercial property dispute. She was sharp, ethical, and absolutely ruthless when protecting her clients' interests. Robert, she said, standing up from her desk as I entered her office. You sounded urgent on the phone last night. What's going on? I handed her Victoria's folder. My son and daughter-in-law want me to sign these documents. I'd like you to review them and tell me exactly what they would mean. Diana put on her reading glasses and went through the papers carefully, her expression growing more serious with each page. Robert, these documents would essentially give Derek and Victoria control over your entire estate while you're still alive. Power of attorney, healthcare directives, immediate access to 60% of your liquid assets. She looked up at me. Did they explain why they want you to sign these? They said it was for estate planning purposes. Tax protection. Diana shook her head. This isn't estate planning, Robert. This is an asset grab. If you signed these documents, you'd be giving them legal control over your business decisions, your healthcare, your finances. They could legally prevent you from accessing your own money. How is that possible? Power of attorney can be very broad. In this case, they've written it so that once you sign, they can declare you mentally incompetent and take over completely. And look at this clause here. She pointed to a paragraph buried in the middle of page 4. They've included language that would make these transfers irrevocable. Meaning once you sign, you can't change your mind. Even if you regain full mental capacity, even if you want to revoke their power of attorney, these particular asset transfers would be permanent. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. So if I had signed these documents last night, you would have woken up this morning as a dependent in your own home, with your son and daughter-in-law controlling every aspect of your life and finances. Diana set the papers aside and looked at me seriously. Robert, I have to ask, Have you been having any cognitive issues? Memory problems? Confusion? Anything that might make them think you need this kind of oversight? I had the flu at a charity event last month. Victoria has apparently been telling people I seemed disoriented. The flu. Diana's expression hardened. Robert, I've known you for 15 years. Your mind is as sharp as anyone's I know. These documents aren't about protecting you. They're about controlling you. What would you recommend? Diana was quiet for a moment, drumming her fingers on her desk. Honestly, I'd recommend we take some proactive steps to protect your assets and document your mental competency. If they're laying groundwork for a competency challenge, we need to be ready. What kind of steps? First, we get you a complete cognitive evaluation from a neuropsychologist. Not because I think you need it, but because we want official documentation of your mental state. Second, we review your entire estate plan and make sure it's bulletproof. Third, we consider some defensive strategies to make it clear that you're aware of their intentions and taking steps to protect yourself. I nodded. Do it. All of it. There's one more thing, Robert. I noticed these documents were prepared by Hartwell, Briggs & Associates. They're a reputable firm, but they specialize in elder law and estate disputes. Specifically, they represent families who want to challenge wills or claim that elderly relatives are incompetent. They hired specialists. They hired the best firm in the city for taking control of elderly people's assets. Diana's voice was grim. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision, Robert. This was planned. I thought about Victoria's confidence last night, her smooth explanations, the way she'd had answers ready for every question. How long would it take to plan something like this? To research the law firm, prepare the documents, build a case for your incompetency? I'd say at least 6 months. Maybe longer. 6 months. While I'd been paying their bills, covering their expenses, writing checks for their charity events, they'd been planning to take everything. Diana, I want to change my will. Certainly. What changes do you want to make? I thought about Derek's face last night, about the tears in his eyes when he asked what I wanted. I want to leave everything to the Denver Youth Education Foundation. Full scholarship fund for kids from working families. Diana raised an eyebrow. Everything. Every penny. The business, the properties, all liquid assets. I want it used to help kids whose parents work 2 jobs to pay rent. Kids who understand the value of what they're receiving. Robert, that's a significant decision. Are you sure? I looked out her office window at the Denver skyline. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Over the next week, Mitchell's investigation revealed exactly what I'd suspected. Derek and Victoria weren't just irresponsible. They were desperate. $75,000 in credit card debt, 2 months behind on their mortgage despite my help, and Victoria had been secretly borrowing against Derek's future inheritance to maintain their lifestyle. The most damning discovery was a handwritten letter Mitchell found in Victoria's car during surveillance. In her own writing, Robert won't be around forever. Derek is too weak to take what's rightfully ours, but I'm not. Once we get power of attorney, we can liquidate enough assets to cover our debts and set ourselves up properly. On Friday afternoon, my phone rang. Derek's voice was strained, desperate. Dad, there's been some kind of mistake. My car insurance was canceled. The lease company is threatening repossession, and our mortgage payment bounced. No mistake, son. Silence. Then, Dad, what are you doing? I'm doing what you asked me to do. I'm being practical about my estate. You can't just cut us off. We have obligations, commitments. You had commitments to me too. $120,000 loan, for starters. Dad, please. Victoria is furious. She's talking about lawyers, about having you declared incompetent. Let her try. The line went quiet for a long moment. Dad, I know we screwed up last week, but we're family. We can work this out. Derek, do you remember what your mother used to say about family? No. She said family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about people who make your life better by being in it. I paused. You and Victoria haven't made my life better in years. You've made it more expensive. 6 months later, I ran into Derek at a coffee shop downtown. He looked different, thinner, older, but somehow cleaner. He was wearing a uniform from a local landscaping company. Dad. He stood up awkwardly. How are you? I'm well. You look good, Derek. Healthy. I'm working. Real work. For the first time in my life. He gestured to his uniform. 40 hours a week, overtime when I can get it. Victoria left me 3 months ago. I'm sorry. Don't be. Turns out she was only interested in the trust fund version of me. He smiled ruefully. Funny thing is, I'm happier now than I've been in years. Poor, but happy. We stood there for a moment, the weight of everything that had happened between us. Dad, I know I can't undo what we tried to do, but I want you to know I understand now. What you were trying to teach me. What's that? That nothing worthwhile comes free. That respect has to be earned. He met my eyes. I'd like to try earning yours again, if you'll let me. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw something I hadn't seen in years. Catherine's strength around his eyes, her determination in the set of his jaw. It's not about earning my respect, Derek. It's about earning your own. I'm working on that. Good. I bought him coffee and we talked for an hour about his job, his plans, his slow climb back to self-respect. When I left, I didn't offer him money or help. I offered him something more valuable, my phone number, and an invitation to call when he was ready to rebuild our relationship as equals. 3 weeks later, he called. Dad, I've been thinking about what Mom used to say about family, about people who make your life better. I'd like to try being that kind of son, if you'll give me the chance. I'd like that too, Derek. That night, I called Diana Walsh and made one small change to my will. Derek would inherit a modest trust, enough for a down payment on a small house, enough to start over with dignity. The rest would still go to the scholarship fund. But my son would have a chance to prove that Catherine's lessons had finally taken root. Some battles are won not by destroying your enemies, but by giving them the chance to discover who they really are when everything else is stripped away. Derek found his strength. Victoria found another wealthy man to manipulate. And I found peace, knowing that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone you love is the opportunity to fall down and get back up on their own. If you liked this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions in the comments below. Family isn't about what you inherit, it's about what you choose to build together.